So let's talk about the controversy on sunscreen. We are coming into summer, and with that definitely means thinking about going outside, enjoying the sun, maybe going to the beach. And when we do those things, typically in our culture nowadays, we like to put on lots of sunscreen. And I don't know about you, but in the areas I have on social media, I've definitely been seeing some pushback against sunscreen from some creators. However, with that pushback, I see in the comments far more than any other type of content. A lot of people really upset about the fact that they're even making this kind of content, that they're promoting not wearing sunscreen. I see people more upset about this than any other topic that I tend to come across that I feel is similar, such as talking about pharmaceuticals or real food. So in this video today, I'm going to do a deep dive into all things sunscreen, the controversy. I'm going to be breaking this video up into 5 different parts, and by the end of it, I hope that you feel very happy with the choice you make about sunscreen. So first things first, why is it such a big controversy? Like I said in the beginning, it seems to be the thing that gets the most pushback from people. I can't say for certain, but I would say that probably a big part of this is because skin cancer as a whole is definitely the most prevalent cancer in the US. About 3.3 million are getting diagnosed with some kind of skin cancer every single year. And melanoma specifically has gone up 27 to 32% in the last decade. And this is all according to the American Cancer Society. So if I was to guess, I would say that a big reason could just be because skin cancer is very close to home for a lot of people. And the increase in the numbers, some have said it could be due to more people getting checked and just people living longer, which does sound like there could be some truth to that. There was one study done in McGill University, and it has shown that people have a tendency to believe that if they put on sunscreen, then they can therefore just go out into any intensity of sun and for any amount of time, and there be nothing wrong with that. But having that kind of mindset and doing stuff like that has been shown in this study to have long-term damage to the skin. So of course, with any topic, there's going to be different takes on the solution to that topic, and that's a good thing because if we all thought the same thing, we wouldn't have any back and forth, we wouldn't actually get closer to the answer. In my research, I have of course come across many claims that the best thing you can do for your skin health and skincare is to lather yourself in sunscreen. In fact, I came across something that said the 3 biggest mistakes people make with their skincare is 1, not putting enough sunscreen on, 2, not wearing sunscreen in the winter, and 3, not wearing sunscreen while you're indoors all day. I do find that very interesting, and I would push back on that mindset for sure. But the main point is there is lots of claims very similar to that, and so it is very easy to see why people would think and be right to assume that most doctors are recommending something similar. But when doing a little bit of digging, and you really do have to do quite a bit of digging actually to find some differing opinions. For example, Dr. Myers, who received their formal doctorate of medicine from Louisiana State's Health and Science Center, she has gone ahead actually and broke down some common ingredients in lots of sunscreens and what harms they can do. So just for the sake of this video, I am not personally going to get into the most detail. I'm not going to go through every single ingredient, and I'm also just going to be looking at mineral sunscreen today because lots of people say that, of course, chemical sunscreen would have the bad ingredients in it, but mineral is the way to go. Mineral is the safe option. I've seen that a lot. So just for the sake of that argument, I'm just going to be looking at mineral sunscreen. So I'm just going to go ahead on my computer and look up mineral sunscreen and just see the first thing that comes up and go with that, because of course that would be the thing. If you're looking for a mineral sunscreen, what would be advertised to you first and foremost? So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, I got one up and I got the whole list of ingredients here, which I will go ahead and show you. So we'll just go ahead now and look at just a couple of the top ingredients in this sunscreen and what they are known to do to the body. Of course, I don't think I can pronounce these well, so I'll try to say them, but I'll put the words here. Homosalate is one. And what homosalate does in sunscreen is it prevents direct UV exposure, which is why it's put in sunscreen, but it also is a hormone disruptor, big time, especially the system with your estrogen. Different studies have shown that exposure has led to 3.5 times more growth and multiplication in breast cancer. and it is very hard for your liver to detoxify, so it really puts kind of a toxic burden on you. Another one, octocrylene, is put in sunscreens, I think because it doesn't dissolve in water, but one study has shown that out of 16 products that contain that in it, there has been an average concentration of 39 milligrams of something called benzophenone, and this is a mutagen, carcinogen, and endocrine disruptor. And this is something that is actually banned in the United States for being in our food products and packaging. Yet we can find traces of it in sunscreen, which is something we put directly onto our skin. This is just a little bit of food for thought, and this is not me saying that all sunscreens contain these kinds of things, but I think it just goes to show that it is super easy when you're not educated necessarily or not looking out for something like this, how easy it is to just go with it and buy something that does have these things in it. Like I said, this was the first sunscreen that came up for me searching mineral sunscreen. So I definitely think that we can't make this video without talking a little bit sciencey. And I want to talk about both the sun as well as human bodies. So not to say that there can't be harmful effects to us from the sun, because we have seen in studies that there definitely can be damage caused by too much sun exposure. But as much as there are people angry and upset with certain people really pushing the no sunscreen, I would argue that there's a lot of people on the other side that kind of make the sun out to be almost a villain character, using certain languages like, we gotta protect ourselves from the harmful, dangerous, like stuff like that. And that to me is not the best language to use, because that makes it sound like the sun and exposure to it is negative as a whole. Let's first not forget that the sun is the main source of life here on Earth. It radiating its light and heat, otherwise known as solar energy, is what allows life to exist the way it does in the physical way here. And that is including our own bodies, and not just in the sense that we need the sun to grow plants that we eat for food and things like that, but even just directly to our bodies, we need sunlight. But vitamin D, which is something that we all need to be able to survive and thrive, is produced in our skin, and it's produced by being exposed to sunlight. But speaking of the human body, let's talk a little bit about differences between people and their different bodies. Because of course, not everybody is gonna react the same and have the same solution. Most people have heard of melanin, which one of the functions of melanin is, of course, producing pigment in our skin. So more melanin in both the skin and eyes, the darker they will be, the darker the complexion, whereas the lighter, the less. But other than just making that pigment, melanin absorbs UV lights, so it kind of protects other layers from the sun rays. But biologically speaking, this is why if we look traditionally at more tropical places, we see higher melanin, so darker pigmentation, because the sun is more intense for longer periods of time and the body needs more protection in those places. That's also why in colder places that have harsh winters, much more rain and much more clouds, we see less melanin, because those bodies don't get enough sunlight. So the sunlight they do get, they need to have a better path to be able to absorb more sunlight to create more vitamin D with the littler amount of sun, if that makes sense. Think of it kind of like a window, and if you have a normal glass window, more sunlight will kind of come in, and that means more vitamin D production, whereas a tinted glass with a dark tint perhaps, less sunlight is going to really come in, and so it makes it harder or take longer to make the same amount of vitamin D. However, it protects from harsher rays better. So bodies have really adapted depending on environment. But no matter the pigmentation of our skin, our bodies all have a natural chemical response when exposed to sunlight to produce something called melanocytes. And melanocytes is just a chemical that makes melanin. So we create more melanin when we are exposed to the sunlight. There's also starting to be research that shows that even our eyes seeing the sunlight, it stimulates something in our eyes and produces something called alpha melanocyte stimulating hormone, which therefore makes melanocytes, which therefore makes melanin. So that's just a lot of fun science, just surface level, but can help your brain start really thinking about the sun and our bodies and that relationship. So now is the point of the conclusion. And I have my own conclusion I'll share a little bit at the end of this, but it's really about your conclusion. So especially with the science portion, I wanted to share kind of an analogy that I have that It doesn't directly correlate by any means, but I just think it's something people know very well, and it has a similar kind of thought behind it. So for example, if you have a double-coated dog, we'll just take my dog Oakley for example, his body has a natural way of dealing with the different seasons. If I was to go in and shave his fur coat thinking that it was going to help him tolerate better, it would actually throw him off. His fur naturally gets thinner in the summer as well as thicker in the winter, just because being outside, his body can tell the change and it adapts for the different weather and temperatures that he needs to be in. Also, kind of a similar thing is, I don't know much about horses, but I know with horses, a lot of people say not to put the blankets on them too much because then they won't develop their winter coats, and then it's harder for them to adapt naturally. If you can see the pattern I'm kind of making, it's mostly just about bodies adapting to our environments. And I'm not saying that there's no place for man-made help when it comes to the environments we're in. Of course not. A big example of that is winter jackets. Despite me being in Maine and of course having European descent, so very much having a body that is more accustomed to the cold, I couldn't go outside all year long and expect to survive. That is where man-made things like winter jackets and clothes and different things really come in. So my personal conclusion is I don't wear sunscreen. I really haven't for years, and that's just what feels right to me. And it is definitely a-okay if you come to a different personal conclusion. We all have different medical history, different environments, different work that we have to do. But I hope just kind of this deep dive over some things makes you think about it a little better. Perhaps it makes you realize that things aren't always black and white. Perhaps you may feel more encouraged to actually look and maybe change brands of sunscreen or really look at the ingredients, or perhaps go down a route more like mine of just trying to let your body naturally adapt. But most importantly, I just hope that it brings the two sides closer together and that you can just be happy with your choice and perhaps just a little less fearful overall. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like this kind of content and would like to see more in the future, please consider subscribing to join this community of like-minded folk. I put out new videos every Monday, and they're kind of a combination of either vlog style or sit-down chats kind of like this. All about just my journey, homesteading, homemaking, and just me trying to live a more slow and simple life. So I do hope you'll stick around just to see what else I'll put out. I'm getting better at making videos all the time, I think. But that is going to do it, and I do hope to see you in the next one. Bye-bye!